Big Brother and the Holding Company. How many people were in this band? 5. We've got Janis Joplin on vocals, Sam Andrew on guitar and vocals, James Gurley on guitar and vocals, Peter Albin on bass, and David Getz on drums. The first thing I wanted to say about the band in general is that I really appreciate men who can appreciate having a female as the lead singer of their band. That can be sometimes difficult to find, and it takes a certain type of man to let a woman step up and be the front person. I know that sometimes, not to focus too much on gender, but there can be more emotional glory and lyrics, and there might be more like female-centered topics if you're going to have a woman fronting your band. And I mean, I know that men can definitely have emotional content as well. It's just that I've noticed being a woman doing this type of stuff that there are certain type of men who really enjoy having a woman being the lead vocalist because it just brings like another element to the music that they may not have if it's a bunch of dudes in a room. And I think that sometimes, men that are cool with this, like it allows them to access a level of their own vulnerability as well. So, shout out to men who play music with women. What I found in learning about the recording of this album is that the band was sort of disappointed in the way that it came out, like with the album's sound in general. They said that the guitars sounded very clean instead of like the raw acid rock distortion that they normally had on stage, because they were like a more of a jam band, I guess, that played longer solos and improvisational jamming and whatever was going on in the scene at the time. And so it says that Sam Andrew later noted, this is a quote, "We were quite disappointed at the time that we could not make the engineer understand what we wanted. He was afraid of the needle going into the red, and that is where we wanted the needle to be all the time." And then it said, songs like All Is Loneliness and Light Is Faster Than Sound, which were under 3 minutes on the album, were often stretched to 10 or more minutes in live performance. So, yeah, I mean, I got it when listening to this album. The general feeling that I got from this is that you're trying to contain something that really wasn't supposed to be contained. I made that note myself before, like, I even read what he thought about it. It just seemed like in the box when it didn't need to be. I get it from an engineer's perspective if you are supposed to have one thing or you feel that it's supposed to be one thing. Like as far, in general, if you go by like the cookie cutter rules of everything, distortion equals bad, especially digital distortion. Now, analog distortion is beautiful and glorious, but I mean, at the time, like, maybe people weren't doing that as much. Like, you want to keep it clean, you can get it on the radio. And then feedback also, I can just speak to my own experiences as like doing live sound. I've done live sound for plenty of psychedelic rock bands, and like feedback is the thing that you're trying to avoid whenever you're doing sound. So, and feedback can be a thing that they are doing for an artistic element of their performance. And like, I literally have spent, the whole freaking set going, is it me? Is it them? Is it me? Is it them? Like, I don't know. You're watching them on stage. You're like, oh God, what's happening? I mean, it's kind of, whenever I read that quote, I totally laughed because as an engineer, I get it. And as a musician, I get it. Like, you want your stuff to be exactly what you feel that it should be. But I mean, you're trying to translate it into something that's like more palatable, I suppose. So from this album, there wasn't really any real traction, even though they had a successful performance at Monterey Pop. The songs: Bye Bye Baby, Easy Rider, Intruder, Light is Faster Than Sound, Call on Me, Women as Losers, Blind Man, Down on Me, Caterpillar, All is Loneliness. My first thought on listening to this album right when it started from track 1, Bye Bye Baby, is what they used to do back in the day in that era in the 60s is they would take entire instrument tracks and put them in one ear or the other. That was a stylistic thing that they used to do. I think when I think about it, it probably was to achieve like more of a separation between the instruments. These days, we really do it from a lot of extreme EQing. Like we'll take out, a good chunk of one of the guitars and then we'll place another guitar like into the chunk that's missing and kind of surgically maneuver instruments around each other. But back in the day, what they used to do is they straight up, like in here, you've got in your right ear bass guitar and an entire drum kit. And then in your left ear, the rhythm and the electric guitar, the lead guitar, yeah, and all the arpeggios and stuff over in your left ear. They're like, put the whole thing over there, it's funny. We just do things differently these days. It's another one of those things that leads to the sound of the time. It's like you can tell that that's the sound of the time because they did things. It's not like it's good or bad. It's just what it was. And I mean, it's pleasurable in a lot of ways. For one thing, on this song that I noticed immediately too, right from the beginning of the album, is that Janis's vocal is doubled. It's recorded twice. Yeah, you've got one in the right ear and one in the left ear, which that's another thing that can be difficult to achieve too, because I've tried to do that on my own recordings, and it's like you really kind of have to get your performance to be as similar as you can possibly get it, one to the other, or else it can sound really, really sloppy, like you're all over the map. So, kudos to her for getting that as close as she could, because you have to do something like exact. My next notes, I think I'm just going to read this. So I think overall the impression that I get is that this album sounds like it's Janis Joplin trying to imitate Jefferson Airplane, that the whole band sounds like that. Mid-60s San Francisco psychedelic rock sound, but some of the lyrics are really cheesy. And I agree, when I read the Wikipedia assessment, that they weren't happy with this record and they wanted it to be like distorted and long solos and stuff, because it ultimately sounds like people holding themselves back or somebody holding them back. As an album, it feels tame. Like, this is mean. Like something I could have recorded half asleep in my basement. Oh, God. Recording was a lot different back then, and it was a lot more difficult than the stuff we do now. That was reel-to-reel tape. It was not the non-destructive things that we have in Pro Tools right here, where I can just go chop, chop, move this over here, and whatever. So, no disrespect. But as a performance, they just needed to let them go. Like Janis needed to go. I mean, just like Jefferson Airplane, for this band, you have the female vocal and the male vocal, and you have like shorter, cheesier type of songs. And it was like psychedelic rock, but I felt like it was really trying to tread a fine line. Like you want to be way far out of the box, but you need to be like right on the edge hits so that it can still be on the radio, so that like when people listen to it on the radio, they would be like, we know what this really is, but it's sort of like masquerading as something that could be socially acceptable for everyone right now. I feel like a lot of the music of that time was kind of like that. It's like, they're alluding to something a little bit in these pop songs, but what are they really doing? What are they really saying on stage? One of the songs that I did find really interesting is when I got to All Is Loneliness. That's towards the end of the album. And it's got this like very buzzy drone, like call and response, row, row, row your boat thing going round and round with Janis and the male singer. And I like that one. It was actually awesome. I think that song is good enough. It was up to Janis's standards, and I thought it should be on the album. It reminded me, what came to mind in the moment was the Stooges song We Will Fall, when they just go on full on psychedelic rock. Although I went back and listened to that too. Just it's like not really similar to that, but that was like what came up in my mind when I heard it. The last song. The last song I felt like had so much great potential. And I was like, how much do I want to remix this? Oh, the drums were like way, way low in the mix. And I was thinking, if this was recorded with modern day techniques and really like put the full force in front of it, it would be so freaking amazing. What was that last song called? No, it was after All Is Loneliness. It was like, I think I was listening to this on YouTube Music. So I think they put another one in there. I don't know what that was. I'm going to have to look that up. Her voice. So one of the questions that I had was her voice always so raspy? Or, was she trying to do an imitation? Did she come out of the box with a ton of grit like she ended up having? And it seems, from this album, you can see that it develops over time. It got grittier in an uncontrolled way through her album's progressions, and then it got grittier in a very controlled and polished way. And that's generally how the voice develops. That's how it goes, with a skill. It's like at first you have too much power. It happened to me. You've got a lot of power, you've got a lot of raw talent, and it takes a lot to develop that in the first place. But then the second part of that is you really have to learn how to tailor that and control it and like rein it back in so that you can push it when you want and you can have restraint when you want. And that's almost harder in a way to learn to do than it is to like go full force, because you're just unleashing it when you go full force. But in order to like have a quality where you are controlling it in every moment, it can be a difficult thing. It can be painful. But I think that's what happened to Janis's voice too. Overall, this album seemed, in a word, formulaic. It was like the pop sound of the 60s that goes on a radio, female male singer, not totally dominated by brass balls, bluesy, gritty female. I said about this, it's a male and a female singer, so at least you have something complimentary so people can say, well, the patriarchy is still sort of there. Oh my God, you guys. I think that I was too hard on this album. This is a debut album, and it was only because we have so much great Janis stuff to compare it to. I just want to say, if this album on its own stood on its own as a piece of work from the time, it would be considered a great album, and I think would have gotten a lot more attention. But to see Janis's development and really her rise as her own star and her own person, and then have it to compare and look back to, I know it didn't get much traction at the time, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't Janis. It wasn't the essence of Janis. Not yet. So now we're going to go to album 2, Cheap Thrills. All right, so now we're going to start to explore when Janis starts to really come into her own and fully be developed as herself. And this is on her second album called Cheap Thrills. So pull it back up, stream it for the first time, whatever you got to do. Let's listen to it. Comment below, tell me what you think, if you have memories or thoughts, and I'm going to dive in and do my own little thoughts and analysis on this great album. Here we go. Cheap Thrills was Janis Joplin's second album. She was still with the band Big Brother and the Holding Company. This album was released on August 12th, 1968. The album was successful because they had gotten attention by the performance in 1967 at the Monterey Pop Festival. And then after that, their first album came out right after that. But this is the one, Cheap Thrills, that really grabbed people. And mainly I did not know this, it was because a documentary on Monterey Pop debuted on December 26, 1968. So it brought further recognition to her because everybody could actually see footage of the festival. And then this album became the most successful album of 1968. I kind of find that surprising and awesome, selling almost 1 million copies. And then in our timeline, Janis left the band somewhere in the beginning of 1969. But for now, let's focus on Cheap Thrills and how awesome it is, because I also didn't know, and this is one that, I listened to back in the day. I had it, a handful of times, not too much, but I always thought this was a live album, like hands down. And I think pretty much everybody did, but I learned that it actually wasn't. The producer, John Simon, incorporated recordings of crowd noises to give the impression that this was a live album, but actually the only live song was Ball and Chain. I was fooled. That's some of that stuff. I don't know. I didn't really think about it. It's not something that I probably would think about and be like, is that legit? I just assumed you've got crowd noises, it's live. That was a surprise to me. The songs on this album are Combination of the Two, I Need a Man to Love, Summertime, Piece of My Heart, Turtle Blues, Oh Sweet Mary, Ball and Chain. And then at the end, the version that I was listening to on YouTube Music has Catch Me Daddy, a live version there, and Magic of Love, another actual live version there. My overall impressions on listening to this again was that I wasn't alive in the 60s, but this album, compared to the first one, was like night and day. It was like the thought that you were having Janis in a box and you're holding her back. On this one, it's just like, you know what? Go. Just go. Unleash all of that raw talent. Janis's vocal is just so raw and gritty, and her essence has come alive here. Culturally, to me, the album has so much feeling and blues in it. It seemed like the album was the sound of the time, that it was culturally relevant back then. And I can see why this is the number one album of 68. Having a female lead like that just really take over and rip through everything in the way that she did, it seemed very apropos of counterculture. That people would like that because it wasn't safe anymore. It was raw, it was real, it was very feeling-based, very emotional. And I think that that's what was coming alive at the time. War was happening, people were really opening their eyes to things, coming to life, and being more open and accepting things in a different way. And she was speaking to what people were feeling. The opening track, Combination of the Two, it feels like it's a journey that you're about to go on. It feels like you're traveling down the road on a journey to somewhere. And then, Janis's version of Summertime and Piece of My Heart, just they're classics. I can't even imagine what it was like hearing that at the time. But I would say Janis gets all her props for those. They're just right out of the gate, instant classics, her versions of those. But what really caught me again, and as always, the guitar. That guitar opening, the lead guitar on Ball and Chain. My God, it's incredible. It sounds like someone screaming in pain. It feels like the feeling of pain and heartache. It rips your heart and soul apart. And that guitar, that's tube distortion right there. Like when you hear that sort of catch in the air, like right when the note hits, it's sort of like ripping into the note. It's the beginning of distortion. That's like real deal tube distortion. When you want to create the tone, like that high pitched tone, like right here, I had noted like Jack White, for example. Everybody says, oh, Jack White scoops out all the mids. That's the mid frequencies. That's how he gets that tone. But I mean, this tone on this guitar, it really occupies, as I was listening, like the entire frequency range. Like you can hear it go up and down through the entire range. There's mids, there's lows, those long notes that he holds at the beginning of that song. It sounds like your heart is screaming, and then Janis's vocal accompanying that is the sound of your heart sobbing. It's awesome. It's like a call and response blues, like your heart is ripping apart by the guitar and your heart is breaking with the vocal. It's giving life and speaking that feeling into the song, and I mean, it's absolute. And what's incredible, mostly, that was live. Like, I can't even imagine seeing that. It's just awesome. And my next thought was, it just goes to show, not to hammer this point home a million times, but I believe that I have in here, is that when you have an artist with you, you don't hold them back. Because you can prevent this awesomeness that happens when you just let somebody go. And I can see, that comparison. Who knows what their first record could have been instead if somebody just would have allowed them to be exactly who they are. You think sometimes that you want to make good artistic choices for somebody for whatever reason. Like maybe you have a certain preference of what you think things should sound like, or you have a certain preference for the way that other people think should sound, or maybe somebody like a higher up, they want things to be a certain way because that's the way that it is. Or, they think maybe somebody's making a dumb mistake by the way that they artfully perform something, because maybe it's something that you haven't heard before or something that you think is like technically wrong and it's going to sound like trash. So maybe, take a step back and say, I'm going to trust that they know what they're going for and just let them go. But I will say on the other side of the coin, sometimes people don't know what they're going for, to play devil's advocate in that defense. It's like, they want it to be unleashed, but I've had plenty of times when I'm with people and they are trying to describe in words exactly what they're going for, and they don't have the language for it. So there is like a back and forth, and things can get lost in translation from engineer and artist whenever you're trying to capture a certain performance. And maybe it's like, it's a dialogue that needs to happen. Or if there's outside pressure telling you that something needs to be a certain way, and, even if you don't want it that way, sneak a freaking recording in there. Like, just do it anyway. Ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And then what you could do is like present the whole thing as it was intended to be, and then say, well, but you know what we also got? This. Ball and chain. The last two songs that I was listening to, the live versions of Catch Me Daddy and Magic of Love, I think, the studio sessions did do service to her, but I think Janis is best live. She needs to be improvisational. Like, it sounds like Catch Me Daddy, that she was just riffing and everybody was playing off of each other. That song could have gone on for like 20 minutes. You can really feel like what it was like in the moment. And I think that's the greatest version of her. And it was the version that was most inspiring to me as a singer. What really inspired me that Janis did for me is she made me not afraid to make mistakes. mistakes in my performances because the feeling and the soul of the moment was more important than perfection. And I still have that mindset today because she allowed me to have that freedom. And it's a great way to be, you know? I mean, we are our own worst critics. Like, everybody wants everything to be perfect, but it's like, if you have that moment where you have a connection with people in your audience or a connection in the performance in the studio or wherever you happen to be, it's like, so you flub a little note here and there. I mean, did you give everything you had in that moment of feeling? That can be more important. But after Cheap Thrills in early 1969, Janis decided to leave Big Brother. And so, you know, I don't know why I was so like fascinated with the story. Like, why did Big Brother get replaced? And so what I found is Janis's management convinced her to discard Big Brother and the holding company as her backing band. Her record label put together a new group of musicians for her. This group, dubbed the Kozmic Blues Band, consisted of Canadian musician John Till and other members of his Full Tilt Boogie, all studio musicians whom her label was familiar with and felt were reliable, plus a horn section. I guess they convinced her to get rid of them. I mean, at least that's what it says, you know? I kind of do wonder why, because, like, you know, Big Brother took a hit in some of my analysis here. But, like, dude, Cheap Thrills was awesome. Like, it has a different type of abandonment that's not as polished. But, like, it wasn't like it was bad. I mean, so, I don't know. I guess they wanted to go in a different direction, and they convinced her to. And boy, am I glad, because album 3, I got them all Kozmic Blues again, mama. Or whatever it's called. Kozmic Blues. This album is awesome. I am going to chop this up into segments because it's going to go on for quite a while. I do go through the entire timeline and all of the albums, so I really hope that you pull up every album, listen to them one by one, and continue along this journey as we explore Janis's music, career, and do some audio analysis of her incredible talent.